The Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport gets a refresh for the 2024 model year with fresh styling on the outside, fresh styling on the inside, as well as a more powerful engine. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as the outside of the Atlas Cross Sport, well, it's been around for 5 years now, believe it or not. And so with that age comes the need for some fresher styling. So we have some new headlights up front there, the new grille, and here on this SE with technology package, which surprisingly is only one up from the base trim, you actually still have the connected light bar in the front there and the illuminated Volkswagen badge. And that certainly gives it a nicer, more high-tech look. So I'd certainly spring for this over the base one, but it's great that you get these great looks even on just this one trip up from the base. But anyway, otherwise, you know, all Atlases get that revised front bumper. We also have some new wheels here, and for the Cross Sport, of course, you have the sportier roof line there. That is the main difference here. And out back you can see that it gets the same kind of enhancement as the regular Atlas with the big light bar and, you know, chunky red arrangement there for the tailgate that we previously, you know, just had standalone taillights. Now they're all blended together there. And otherwise, you know, I don't love the fact that we still have very bold fake exhaust tips in the back, but otherwise, you know, just still a nice, large, substantial looking midsize SUV for those who want something a little bigger than the other smaller, older competitors that are out there. The interior of the Atlas Cross Sport also gets a lot of big changes. There is some familiar stuff here as well, but I mean, it's a massive change. And my wife and I already did a full in-depth interior review on the regular 3-row Atlas, so I'm gonna leave that video for all the deep dive stuff. This is gonna be a little bit more of an overview here, but the big news is you get this big 12.3-inch touchscreen as standard. And it's a really nice unit. I mean, it's really very colorful, very high resolution. And the only downside is that it gets rid of basically all of your climate controls. You now have little touch sliders there to change the climate and the volume. They work okay. It's something you can get used to, but I don't think it's anybody's first choice as far as controls goes. And it is what it is. You know, it's just one of those things you have to try out for yourself and see whether or not it's going to be a love it or hate it kind of thing. Otherwise, you know, this new software that it's running as well is okay, but it's also many taps just to get into like starting satellite radio and changing radio stations. And there's a few other things like just turning on your heated or cooled seats takes multiple taps. It's just, it's not the best. Again, you can live with it. It's not the end of the world, but you know, there's just most other companies that do a better job with just allowing you to do those basic tasks a little easier. But otherwise, you know, there's a lot of great padding on this interior. I mean, even again, one up from the base trim, we have quilted leatherette seats. You can go to full leather if you want in the higher trims. But I mean, all the padding is so nice. I mean, even down by your knees, you have some padding. You have some nice trim on the dash and more padding up there. And you have digital gauges as standard here. And even like this bass stereo is really good sounding. You can go up to a Harman Kardon, I think, in the top trim if you want to pay over 50 grand. But this stereo, the bass one, is really good, actually. I don't think there's any need to upgrade, because the Harman Kardon one, from my memory of past Volkswagens, is never anything amazing either. I think you're good with just the regular bass stereo. And otherwise, I mean, you have like a Qi wireless charging pad as standard. You have a heated steering wheel as standard. I mean, even just the fact that these are cooled, you know, ventilated seats plus the heat is something that, like, you want cooled seats in a Grand Cherokee, I'm pretty sure you got to go well up over $50,000 to get that. And it's just a lot of content in the base trim. And like I argued in my regular 3-row Atlas review, the base trims are the way to go for the Atlas, because they kill everybody else on value in these base trims. When you go up to those higher trims, they make a whole lot less sense and they're a lot less appealing. But if you go for one of these lowest trims, they really pack them with standard equipment, and it's really impressive. The other big things here, you know, with the Cross Sport that are unique, of course, is the fact that you have only 2 rows instead of 3, and that second row is massive. I would say that from my memory and just my recollection of all these midsize SUVs that I've reviewed in the past couple of years, this has the biggest back seat by far. Even the Mazda CX-70, which is just a CX-90 with the 3rd row removed, even that I think has a little bit less second row space than this does. I mean, it is massive. I'm 5'9", sitting behind myself. I have tons of legroom, and it is huge back there. Honestly, one of the biggest back seats outside of like exotic high-end luxury vehicles. It's huge, huge, huge. Even the headroom is really good, even though, you know, it's a little bit of a sloping roof line, but it doesn't really slope until you get towards the actual, you know, hatch area there. And so I mean, just a massive interior in this thing. And if you're looking for a mid-size 2-row and you want the most space possible, I think that's where the Atlas Cross Sport ticks the box perfectly, because it is going to give you a massive amount of space. And I think, again, only the CX-70 really comes close. And then the cargo space is also really massive. It's a super long space, very wide. Beneath the floor, you even have a spare tire that's a good size. And that is really good too. I think the only thing where like the CX-70, I think that gets pretty close as far as a cargo space in the back of that. But the nice thing with CX-70 is there's also storage space underneath the floor. I don't believe the CX-70 has the spare tire, so there's a little bit of a trade-off there. But if you want the most space possible in the cargo area, CX-70 might be a little bit better. But I mean, both of these are really top of the class and really blows away anything else in the mid-size 2-row SUV segment, honestly. And so, really good amount of space there. And so, yeah, the bottom line with this interior and even this whole vehicle in general is just big. It feels big and chunky and roomy, and if that's what you want, I mean, this is really the biggest feeling, mid-size 2-row until you get to actual body-on-frame, like truck-based SUVs. It is really a very roomy, and it makes for a great family vehicle. We have our car seat installed here, plenty of room for our daughter and all the stuff we can imagine to throw in here. It handles it all with ease. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Atlas Cross Sport has the newer Volkswagen key here, which is a really nice key. It's very glossy. Might get a little scratched up and stuff with the glossy black, but it's very cool looking nonetheless. Metal on the sides, some nice buttons there on the back, and so of course it is also keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the Atlas Cross Sport. So the first things I notice are like all the basic driver inputs actively annoy me in this vehicle. And I remember some of this in other Volkswagens and the Atlas, especially in the past. But for some reason, it just seems like it's a little bit more annoying here this week for whatever reason. So biggest annoyances. First off, the brake pedal is way high up above the gas pedal, and so my shin muscle has been getting a workout this week. My shin muscle has been sore from pivoting, from going, down on the gas and then all the way over, up, and pulling my foot all the way back so it clears enough to hit the brake pedal. It's just not good. I don't know, maybe it works for some body types better than others, but for me and my feet and ankle arrangement here, it is just like not comfortable after any kind of driving. Even just a few minutes of driving, this gets tiring, because it's, again, I gotta maximize that flex of my ankle. And I just don't know why the brake pedal has to be, 3 or 4 inches higher than the gas pedal. They should be nice and even. It's strange. So that's one thing I don't like. Throttle response is also way too touchy. I guess they want it to be responsive feeling, but you really have to fine tune your inputs here. If you give it even a little bit too much gas, it wants to immediately take off and rip your head off. It's a strong engine. They gave it more power this year. That's great. But again, you got to blend this stuff in so that it's, especially in a, we're talking still about a comfy cruiser crossover. We're not talking about a sports car here. And the fact that, I've gotten used to it over the course of the week here. It's not something that's impossible to learn. But, you get in any other vehicle, then you hop into this, you're going to be feeling like you're flooring it everywhere you go for the first few times, because it's just like you're used to regular inputs, and then in this, that is triple the response of every other vehicle. So it's quite the drastic change there. The other thing, though, that I don't love, the final driver input here, is the steering. The steering is some of the lightest and most disconnected steering that I've encountered in recent memory. And, in a 3-row crossover, I kind of give it a little bit more of an excuse. And it's like, okay, fine. I still think that it's one of the worst feeling steering for 3-row crossovers as well for the regular Atlas, because you can still have light steering but still have it feel connected to something, versus this feeling completely, I feel like I'm driving in a video game or something with this. It's just like there's hardly any feedback, honestly. But in this, being the Cross Sport version, again, I'm not expecting it to be a sporty version necessarily, but it's just like way too light and disconnected for the steering feel here. And yeah, it's not good in my opinion. So anyway, but we're going to go ahead and turn down onto this back road and see how it does. I don't think there's any sport mode. I can't find it. There's no buttons anymore. So anyway, let's just hit it and go. So there we we go. It gets up and goes pretty nicely, even in just the regular mode here. And this one is front wheel drive, and so thankfully it didn't just lay strips of rubber there, but that's another thing this week is, in addition with, having this super responsive throttle, it means that, even if the wheels turn slightly and I'm turning around a corner or something, I mean, it instantly wants this dual burnout. I've done more burnouts of this thing this week than I think I've done all year and everything else that's at least front wheel drive, especially as far as just regular crossovers goes. Laid the most tire this week in the Atlas, so it takes the cake for that. It's kind of funny they still offer these with front wheel drive, considering most of the competition does just come with all wheel drive as standard now, but I can appreciate the appeal of, front wheel drive version for people that live, in sunny states that don't ever have, bad weather. You can just have the front wheel drive, save yourself a little bit of money, which, by the way, it's a $1,900 option for all wheel drive in this, which is more than most as well. Anyway, as far as this 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that is revised and is a new evolution of this motor here, it does 269 horsepower, 273 pound-feet of torque, which is 7 more pound-feet than before and 34 more horsepower than before. It runs through an 8-speed automatic transmission, and we'll do about a 7.7 seconds 0 to 60 time is what Motor Trend got for the all-wheel drive version. I'm assuming front-wheel drive, again, especially with all this wheel spin, you're probably going to have, a lower, 0 to 60 time, or slower, I should say, something over 8 seconds potentially. But I did actually find the drive mode selector. It's one of these buttons buried right by the hazards here, one of the few capacitive touch buttons we actually do have. So I put it in that sport mode now. We're going down this windy road here, and let's see how the Atlas Cross Sport handles. So we do have 255 wide tires on this thing, so I mean pretty wide tires, but unfortunately they're just these Kumo tires, nothing super sporty. Kumos typically don't have a ton of grip in my experience as well, compared to some of the more expensive competitors out there, in the tire world, but it might be part of why I'm doing burnouts so easily as well here. But it handles all this stuff pretty well. It's large, it feels large, but it's pretty flat with the handling. The Atlas already, even the 3-row versions, were one of the best handling ones, in my opinion. It wasn't the best these days. I think certainly there's some that are better. And even in the 2 rows, when we're talking about stuff that competes with this, I think, the CX-70 definitely handles a lot better than this. Feels, it's a better platform. It's a longitudinal engine, rear-wheel drive based, all-wheel drive platform. And, this is still front-wheel drive based. And it's just, it's soft and, it doesn't really have very sporty feelings to it, especially even, I'm in sport mode, but steering weight still is pretty light, and that steering is just so disconnected that, this thing doesn't really feel like it wants to be rushed. It's happy cruising. That's really what this thing is set up for, and for most buyers, that's all they're asking out of one of these things. So I think that Volkswagen's being very pragmatic with their approach of being like, this is what people want in this segment, and I completely can appreciate that. But, again, remove sport from your thinking, even if the car is telling you it's called a cross sport. But, again, it's totally fine. These weigh, I believe, with all-wheel drive, about 4,500 pounds. Might be a little bit less here for the front-wheel drive version, for anyone that's curious. Another weight thing that is actually pretty impressive is the tow rating. These can tow up to 5,000 pounds, which is solid for, something in this class of vehicle, and so we'll be one of the better towers out there for sure. And, so, I mean, it's, a nice thing to cruise around on. I'd say also, it's pretty quiet in here, even though this road we're on currently does generate some more road noise and a little bit rougher. Really don't hear too much. So I'd say it is a little bit more refined than some of the others, especially some of these older competitors. A lot of this segment is still very dated. And I think this certainly, has a leg up in refinement over some of those older ones for sure. And now out here on the highway in the Atlas Cross Sport, it is a really nice highway cruiser because, again, cruising is what this thing does very well. And the one great thing here for 2024 is that we now have adaptive cruise control as standard. We have lane keep assist as standard, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. All those things are standard. The only things that are still optional, like a 360 camera, is optional, which is more of a convenience thing than it is a safety thing. But that's extra cost stuff. But I mean, adaptive cruise being standard is really, really nice because, again, some of the other, especially European competitors, can still charge you extra for that. But as far as mainstream stuff goes, that is pretty much standard everywhere, so it's great that we have that. And going around this gentle corner here now, letting the travel assist, which is what Volkswagen calls their lane keep assist system, with that working here, it handled that corner really well. And I did some more highway driving earlier this week with the lane keeping assist system doing its thing, and it does a really good job of keeping itself in the lanes for the most part. Now, it just was barely kissing the right side here just now, so maybe it's I mean, the road's pretty clear here with the line definition, so hopefully it's not getting confused here now, but it has been pretty good all week. And typically the Volkswagen system is, a pretty good one, all things considered here. And so yeah, going into another gentle corner here, and yeah, just letting my hands hover on the wheel, letting it do the steering here, even though, again, it is a hands-on system, so you do have to always be monitoring it, always, giving little nudges to the wheel so it knows your hands are there. But yeah, it's doing a good job here. So, it's a nice system to kind of give you a little bit of relaxation, help make those micro corrections for you a little bit. It's just really nice to have. Now, the last thing to mention here is, the fuel economy and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, these are rated at 20 mpg in the city, 27 on the highway, and 23 combined. And my driving was, I'd say, a little more city, but it was pretty close to a 50-50 combined kind of driving cycle for me. A lot of highway this week, actually. And I'm averaging 21.7 mpg over 134 miles of driving here. And so just one under the combined figure, but I am doing better than the city rating. So I'm pretty happy with, the amount of fuel economy I'm getting here. It still is, 22 mpg, but this is a pretty large SUV. So, I'm pretty happy with that. If you do want better fuel efficiency, there is like the Toyota Crown Signia now. There's a new competitor in the midsize SUV segment here that is a hybrid. Does do, a little bit less horsepower, almost 30 less horsepower, but, it does give you a lot better fuel economy if that is something that you're excited about. But otherwise, most of the others are going to give you pretty similar fuel economy. Although it's worth noting, even the Mazda CX-70, which I'll get to in a second, even with that turbo inline 6, I was able to, get, I believe, pretty close to 30 mpg on the highway in that. So, that even surpasses the 27 this is rated out on the highway. So, not the most efficient, but it's, again, a large brick. But just keep in mind, there are some options out there that do better fuel economy. But as far as pricing and how this compares to the competition, so as far as pricing goes, again, if you go for a base version of this, that is where the value is the strongest. These start at $38,410, and basically every competitor, there's a couple exceptions, but most of them are going to be starting, around $40,000. So there's already undercuts of those, and again, the fact you get so much standard equipment when a lot of the comparable vehicles are going to, charge you more for that stuff, is where, again, it really makes a lot of sense in these lower trims. Once you go up to the top trims, all competitive pricing goes out the window. But, this one has tested with a technology package, even though this one still doesn't really have very many options. I think it's basically just the paint. This one is like $42,655. And even that one little step up, again, gives you the nicer lighting on the front and the back and stuff. Even that little step up, it's a significant jump in price. We're talking a $4,000 jump for this technology package. And, you also have to judge for yourself whether that stuff is worth the extra $4,000. But once you're into the price of this one, the problem is that basically there's more compelling options out there. The strongest competitor that's really game over compared to this, in my opinion, is the Mazda CX-70 once again. That CX-70, you can get one for the same $42,000 price tag as this. It's pretty well matched on equipment. I think you might lose out on cooled seats on that one. But other than that, it's, again, all-wheel drive at that price tag versus, again, this would be $44,500 if it had all-wheel drive because of this one being front-wheel drive. But so, it's like $2,000 under an all-wheel drive comparable to this. And the thing with the CX-70 is even that base one gets an inline 6 turbocharged engine with way more torque than this has, and a really strong, very refined motor. It's very luxurious. It's even plusher in that than it is here in this. Again, it really has no compromises on the space front either. It's a fantastic platform. It's Mazda reliability. It has a longer warranty, by the way. Like, this has a 4-year, 50,000 mile bumper to bumper. So that is a little bit longer than some others' bumper to bumper coverage. But the powertrain, most other companies do 5 years, 60,000. And, so this is kind of a little less than those. So that's kind of disappointing as well. But that CX-70 is just like, I just spent a week with one of those not too long ago, and I did a full review on both the plug-in hybrid and the regular gas version, which is awesome. They have a plug-in hybrid. Again, if you want an electrified option, you can get that as well for not much more, and actually right now they're leasing better for the plug-in hybrid version. But I love the CX-70. It is hands down my favorite of the bunch in this segment. As long as you're okay with it looking the same as the 3-row version, because it does. There's no swoopy roofline like you get here in this. But as long as you're okay with the styling on CX-70, which in my opinion at least is very beautiful still, CX-70 all day, every day, you know, there's no contest in my opinion. And honestly, even, you know, like I said earlier, the Crown Signia, that's a hybrid, and that gives you a very long cargo area as well, just like this. It's not as large, that's more of like a slightly lifted wagon, but it's nice and long, so you still have, you know, good cargo space. Rear seat space isn't quite as big as this, but it is still, you know, a plentiful amount of space. And those, even for, you know, their base one, also have heated and cooled seats and match this identically on content and all that. Those are $45,000 and have standard all-wheel drive. So again, $44,500 for one of these all-wheel drive, $500 more for way better fuel efficiency, and a little bit of a smaller, easier to park kind of vehicle if that's something that appeals to you. And you also have Toyota hybrid reliability. Your mileage will vary. Lots of people have great luck with Volkswagens as well. But just one thing, you know, generally the consensus is that, you know, those Japanese brands are going to be a little bit more solid long term if that's something you're interested in. You know, the other component too that also hurts these a little bit is that there are some older competitors that, even as far as MSRPs goes, are going to be giving you, you know, a lower price tag. There is like the Honda Passport and the Chevy Blazer. Both of those come in about $1,000 less than this. Now those lose out on the cooled seats, but in the Passport's case, you actually have a V6 engine. For those who missed the V6, which has been dropped here from this, you know, you have the V6 now still in the Passport, and it's still an option in the Blazer. You get a Turbo 4 now as standard in the Blazer, but you can, you know, get that V6 as an extra cost thing. It's, I think, about $1,000 extra, so it's just available, which is nice in that as well. And so, you know, I mean, the tech is more dated, smaller screens, way less plush in the Blazer and in the Passport. And so, you know, I don't really think those are great competitors, because again, you're only saving $1,000 or so. If you must have a V6, you know, there you go. But again, I would just say get the turbo inline 6 in the CX-70. So, you know, again, if you stick under 40 grand with a base one of these, you know, you can maybe make some sense there, and that could be, you know, more of an appealing proposition. But, you know, for basically every other instance, you know, you're going to be better off with one of those competitors, in my opinion. But again, if you want a gigantic back seat, if you want a ton of space and you like this large shape, you know, I think that, again, CX-70 comes close to matching this, but I think this still probably takes the cake as the biggest, most truckiest feeling of these mid-sized two-row crossovers. And so those strong competitors, combined with the fact that, again, the driver inputs in this are just not well done, in my opinion. And again, because of the active annoyance, the sore shin muscle I now have, you know, all of these things, man, I really can't recommend the Atlas, again, unless you fit into that niche that likes those few things I mentioned that this has over those others. Otherwise, you know, I commend them for the very impressive standard equipment, and I think that makes sense if the other stuff doesn't bother you. But outside of that, yeah, you're better off with one of those competitors. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here. Let me know your thoughts on the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. Big thanks to Volkswagen for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.